it again. Fulham needed a goal scorer. It seems like they found one.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop, if you know, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham, or that's what we believe here anyway. And we're here to talk about a wonderful Saturday afternoon where we took points off Newcastle away at St James's Park. Who'd have thought? I know there were some predictions, some bold predictions, but who'd have really thought? We're here to talk, and we're going to be having a nice chat with Mark and Sam. So, Sam, how are you?
I'm very good, Father. This is the first time we've actually done it together in a while. I feel very warm inside. I didn't appreciate. So, for anyone who watches the live stream, I don't know when this started, but I just do a little fist pump, and Dad let me do a fist pump for what felt like about 2.5 minutes. So I am out of breath now, because my family is cruel. But Mark isn't, so I'm very glad that I'm here with Mark to support me and my needs and just talk about a lovely, lovely day.
What a segue. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Mark, please tell us how happy you are to be here.
I mean, like you said, who would expect the double over Newcastle? And, you know, they are not the Newcastle from 3-4 years ago, right? They've got some pretty impressive players. So, happy to go over that in excruciating detail, and I'm sure we'll take one or two detours on the way as we do so, but it's going to be good. So let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, let's get all the cliches out on the table to start with. Absolute game of two halves. And, you know, it was a fairly tense opening piece there. They came at us pretty hard. It's a very, very difficult place to go. Huge crowd baying for the blood of our 11. And they really came at us. And I have to say, I was pretty nervous for those first few minutes. They came at us hard. But guys, I'm not going to go through how you felt about the starting 11 because it's always pretty much the same. And I think the only real change that was well and truly expected was Adama coming in for Harry Wilson, who, if we haven't already talked about it enough, that's a major blow for us. That's a serious injury for what looked like something pretty innocuous when he went down. And it's obviously creating some ripples into how we behave in the transfer market and what it means for us for the rest of the season. But how do you feel we started out, if we can break this into even the first 15 minutes and the following 30? Mark, how do you feel that we started out?
We always seem to control the game really well, but when we've mentioned it before, it's the final third where we really let ourselves down, and I find it so frustrating because I'm starting to feel, and I know we can't question Marco. I don't want to question Marco. He's a Premier League manager, and I'm not, right? But I don't understand how we can move at such pace into the final third, and then we seem to pause and favor control and composure. Which is not a bad thing because it's a balance, but we want control and composure instead of going for it 100%. And I think once you give the opposition time to reset, it's a lot more difficult to score those goals, right? When the defense is set up and they're ready, you need the quality of someone like Willian, right? Who can curl a ball into a postage stamp size place in the top corner and beat a goalkeeper and 4 defenders. But we don't really have that. Maybe we have it a little bit with Kearney, but yeah, I mean, same old story, isn't it? Great in transition, so much better against teams that are willing to actually play instead of deploy the low block and try and hit us on the counter 2 or 3 times in the game. But yeah, a bit frustrating. And I think some of that frustration showed in the Discord as well, myself included, where it was just like, we get to the box and we run out of ideas, and then we pass it around from wing to wing, and then we inevitably lose it and get hit. But what did you guys see?
I really appreciate how succinct and how well thought out Mark's point is, because I'm going to be pissy and whiny. I hated the first half performance, kind of overall. I thought I actually completely agree with Mark. I thought we were actually quite good at building up and actually getting into those areas. and I thought we were so wasteful. I kept forgetting Smith Rowe actually existed. And I felt that our midfield was really, really dominated, especially in the first half. It was actually really disheartening to see. I was watching it with like a friend of mine who I'm kind of trying to get them into Premier League and just football in general. I lured them in with a Fulham shirt because they want to be a hipster and lean into bloke core a little bit. But that was my way of actually getting them in. And it was quite interesting. I was telling them, because anytime Newcastle were around the box, I was like, I'm not too worried about that because our defense is really, really tight and it's really, really secure and it's really solid. But just the wastefulness was just so frustrating. And the second half was completely different, but we're talking about the first half right now. And I just felt in the first half that there was no creativity. There was lots of aimless crosses. It was just really, really poor. Really, really poor in my opinion.
Well, I don't think it was completely poor. I don't think you can generalize and say we were terrible. I don't think we were, but I definitely agree that we lacked potency in the final third. Like even once we got to that final third, and let's call it out. I mean, Smith Rowe, again, not to dump on the guy. I think in the last couple of weeks he's shown us more, and he's been better than he's been for 6 weeks. So, I mean, that's encouraging and it's improving. But I rate him as someone who can run at defenders and can really open teams up. But I don't see it enough for him. And Jack and I were having this discussion on the sofa as we were watching the game, and we weren't fully in agreement because I was getting frustrated that he would get the ball in a fairly central position and spread it wide. And Jack was saying, no, I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah, sure, classically. But I think we're so much more dangerous when he turns and runs because he's got the skill to do that. And I just don't see it enough from him. But hang on a second, Sam. But, to sort of open up and tear apart what was really happening, I was incredibly frustrated at Jimenez in particular, who I thought had a terrible first half. His effort was really good, as it always is, but he wasted some really good opportunities by not even getting his half shots on target, and just I don't know. I was surprised at how poor his execution was. And sorry, Sam, jump in.
So the point I was going to make is I don't necessarily feel like I'm being too harsh, just purely because, I was talking about it with my friend Ben. Shout out, Ben. I love all these guys. I know what they're capable of. So when I see them be wasteful, it's equally as frustrating. Jimenez is such a good example of this. I know what Jimenez can do. So then when I see him not necessarily slacking, but just not making good decisions, it really, really, really bothers me because, the second half is the best example of it. It's just a completely different team. So I don't know what was going on in the first half. I'm not sure if the pitch was wet. Because everyone was slipping around. Like, why was everyone slipping around like crazy?
That was definitely a thing. Both sides literally looked like they were out there in trainers. And like both of them losing their footing. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? It wasn't just Fulham who brought the wrong boots. Both sides were having problems. But, to sort of get back to some of the detail, I thought they were very sharp in the first 10 minutes. We did get the game under control, as Mark rightly pointed out. And we were, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the first half, possession was pretty evenly shared between both sides. And we looked really comfortable on the ball. And there's never a question about that. We can mix it with the very, very best. We hold the ball really well. We pass the ball really well against any side in the Premier League. But it's about how effectively we really break sides down when the further we move up the pitch. And it's really concerning. And I guess there's no surprise that and this could have been your comment, I think, in either the WhatsApp group, Mark, or in the Discord. I think you described Fulham as giant slayers. And was that you who said that, or am I just dreaming that?
I'll take credit for it. I'm pretty sure, but it's a cool phrase, so let's go for it.
Yeah, and we are giant slayers, and problematically, not so effective against lower teams who want to sit in. We know that, and so I suppose it's not that surprising that against the Newcastle, who were very, very happy to attack and really come after us, there was more space, and we're good at those styles of formations or game styles, if you like. So on paper, you go to St James's Park and think, well, we're good against attacking sides who will give us opportunities, but still difficult place to go. I thought we were fortunate not to concede a goal in the first 15 minutes. Well, that's how it felt to me. They had a couple of shots on target. They had that blinding long range shot in the first half.
My God.
From Tonali, yeah, that was a great strike.
Which could well have been the goal of the season, but for probably 10 or 15 centimetres too high. And I think we were lucky to avoid conceding a goal. I think not from memory, I'm looking at a cheat sheet. What am I talking about? It was Murphy on the 37th minute who scored, and let's just roll back what happened there. Burn, from my memory, clears the ball with a long-range pass up to the wing. Castagna, who I think had been rinsed so many times by his opponent, took to man marking and followed him, in my view and in Jack's view when we were watching it, way too far up the pitch, and was then watching the man rather than the ball. And he got completely done and turned, and he was not Gordon's equal for pace all day in any way or regard. And he got absolutely done there, and I think it actually, Gordon puts a decent cross, cuts back one, and is a healthy deflection off Bassi, I believe, which falls into the path of Murphy, who slots it away. I mean, we miss those every week, so I'm not going to say that was an easy goal, because we seem to miss opportunities like that on a fairly regular basis. But dangerous position for us to be in on the 37th minute, going into half time having not scored, because everyone knows we need to score and actually sort of force teams to come at us. Guys, what did you think? I mean, that's my summary of what I saw. What did you think about that goal in terms of, what could we have done better? Could Castagna have done better?
Well, I actually thought Castagna overall played a really, really good game, and I feel really bad that this is going to be like probably the biggest spotlight of the entire game, because I thought he made some great tackles, really more so in the second half, and I thought he really, really contributed. I still like Castagna a lot. You're right, he just wasn't necessarily matched for pace. I was saying to my friend, he's going to come up a lot today. But I would actually rather go down in like 1-0 going into halftime, just because then we needed to completely reset. I'm not sure if we would have been as tenacious coming out of the blocks in the second half if we weren't a goal down. But I think it was actually crucial that we did kind of receive some kind of comeuppance. It was a good goal. Bassi gets pulled out of position. It's well worked by Newcastle. I can't fault them for that. And and we needed something to come back from. And yeah, I mean, when we talk about the second half, we'll talk about the second half. But Mark, I want your 2 cents first.
Yeah, great points from Sam. I mean, what I'd like to say is I think luck cuts both ways, right? So when you look at it from the Newcastle perspective, they're like, well, Isak hit the crossbar, Tonali hit the crossbar, so we were really unlucky. Well, it was a great move, right? That move that they scored, Murphy scores, is more, strategy and skill than luck. But it does take a deflection off Bassi. So, the intended target is Isak, and we're there. We're there to stop that ball. The deflection hits just right for Murphy, who, that's not luck. He's running it. He's clever. He's running in to catch a deflected ball or a spilled save. So that's good. But I feel, I may be wrong, we need to slow it down, but I feel like Leno is really close to it. He may even get a finger on it or something, but it goes in, right? So it's a good move. So, that's kind of the nature of the game. I guess you create your own luck in a sense by taking those shots, taking those chances, being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, the other point that you made, Sam, that I really agree with is we're going to, Castagna did get spun and he got completely done for pace by Gordon. I didn't understand when they signed Gordon for 40 million, but now I see it. Very fast, tricky, skillful. But the rest of the game, Castagna, he did well. I think he makes 2 massive blocks in front of Isak later on. And he actually picks the ball off Isak when he takes it down with this beautiful touch from a long-range cross. And he beats Anderson, right? And he's lining himself up. And out of nowhere, Castagna comes out and just picks his pocket. And I think we got to give him credit for that as well. He's probably... they're not immune from the chatter and he knows that Kenny's gone and there's that pressure on him, and he's probably heard we're looking for a right back as well, and he must be bloody exhausted. But after that goal, I think it gave him a new lease on life. He really, really felt like he had something to prove.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Castagna, and I do like Tim Castagna. I think we all do. I think he's really well respected. I think he has long played second fiddle to Kenny Tete, which I think is fair and justified. Kenny Tete, I think, is a better player. I think he's a more exciting player. They're different kinds of players, but Tim Castagna has done a good job for Fulham. I feel somewhat sorry for him in that, as you say, he looks exhausted to me. He looks really tired. He looks fatigued, which kind of worries me because the next step is generally injury, and I don't even want to jinx that, but that tends to be what happens. I think the problem is compounded. He had a couple of really bad games a couple of games ago, and I don't think yesterday, over the last month, was his worst game, but I think he got comprehensively outplayed by Gordon, who... Funny, I said the same thing to Jack. I said, I never actually realised how quick he was. And I know he's skillful, I know he's dangerous, but I didn't actually realise how quick he was. He's a very, very difficult customer. And so I think it kind of, it showed Castagna up a few times, but maybe that's not entirely... shade and shame on Castagna, because he's a good player. He's a very, very good player. Let's just step sideways for a moment and talk about... I noticed, actually, just skimming some of the stats before we went live and looked at the number of yellow cards we picked up in the game. And I remember my fury. Jack and I were screaming at the box during as the first half unfolded, because our best friend Chris Kavanagh, I thought he was being I thought he was being extremely unfair in terms of the number of opportunities, how quick he was happy to give a yellow card to one of our players, and how many opportunities he was giving to a very filthy Joe Linton, who was going in very, very hard. And when he finally gave him, I thought it was so ironic, when he finally gave him a yellow card, I saw him mouth to Joe Linton, "I've already given you 4 chances. This is the 4th time." I don't recall him giving any of our players 4 chances, let alone even a couple. So what the hell was going on there? And he was, I'm singling out one player there, but he was doing a lot of damage. He was he's a big boy and he was throwing his weight around a lot and actually causing a lot of trouble in midfield for us. And so that, yeah, am I? Have I got the goggles on here, or did anyone else see what I saw?
It wasn't the worst, if I can jump in. It wasn't the worst, but it was pretty bad. I think the worst I've seen is whoever refed us against Ipswich, which was just absurd. It was almost, yeah, gonna get in trouble if I was actually a member of the Football Association saying stuff like this, but it was weird. But I think Kavanagh, it was bad, and anytime he could justify a yellow, he would give it to us, and anytime he could, it's a 50-50 and he could justify a verbal warning, he would give them that opportunity. In the first half, I think there's a couple of cards later on. But
he really hates us, doesn't he? He really hates us.
He's not a fan. I wonder why.
He just can't hide it. He just can't hide it.
But the Leno yellow I thought was ridiculous. How many times? Yeah. It just happens. Whenever a team's winning, there's time wasting. It's unpleasant, but it happens, right? And maybe after the goalkeeper's taken the piss for the third time or the fourth time, then you give him one verbal, you might even give him two verbal warnings, and then finally you bring out the yellow and everyone cheers. But at that point, it's 90+4, so who cares, right? Leno wastes time for the first time. It's not even that much. It's like 8 seconds.
It wasn't that much. It actually wasn't that much.
Immediate yellow. And come on, man.
He's looking for it.
Really unfair. Yeah.
He just kind of reminds me of like a bit of a shit uncle with a god complex, because like his power isn't that much, but he just really likes asserting for the sake of asserting, and that just kind of really annoys me. It's not the end of the world, but at the same time, it's more irritating than frustrating for me. Because I just kind of look at him with a little bit of, you just seem kind of small to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Look, if we had lost, I'd probably be singing kind of a different tune, but it's just, he's a little bit too easy to hate for me. If anything, I'm just kind of like, there's better uses of my time. He's just an annoying person. Like, I wouldn't invite him around for dinner, because he just doesn't give that. Yeah. But like he's like at the same time, I can't give my care and time to Chris Kavanagh. I really can't. Like
it's not an original observation at all, but it's very obvious to all and sundry that it generally tends to be about Chris Kavanagh. He likes to be noticed. He likes to assert his control, and I know this is contentious, and it's probably. It's probably not contentious at all, but I thought it was notable that his final blow of the whistle after extra time had been added on in the first half, where I think it was already beyond the final minute of extra time that had been allotted, and Newcastle actually forced Fulham into a corner and he blows it up. Now, I think he's well within his rights to do that, but it's such a dick move, really, because and I know there's lots of debate about how this the rules should possibly be changed in terms of when play stops in a similar way to rugby, that the whistle goes at the end of time and the next time the ball goes out or there's a foul or whatever, that's when the period ends. But anyway, look, I just thought I thought this would not be a fair conversation without the mention of Chris Kavanagh's shithousery, particularly when it comes to Fulham Football Club.
Look, I mean, if he wants attention, he's got it, because we talk about him more than any other fucking ref. So, like, but like, honestly, just dye your hair if you want attention, you know?
I mean, really, he may as well, right?
Yeah.
I will jump in, probably, if there is anyone from Newcastle watching, I will admit that the Tonali yellow was rubbish, and we would be fuming if one of our defenders or midfielders made a legitimate but risky tackle but got the ball, and I think that the replay shows it. So I don't know, do you guys think that should be live checked and you can rule that out, because it does change a game?
100%. It should be. I know everyone's very quick to say, "Oh, I don't want to affect the flow of the game," but that's bullshit. I mean, he got plenty of the ball, and it's a clear and obvious error. It's a clear and obvious error, surely, that he actually judged him as being making. He'd probably defend himself, and maybe the VAR panel defended by saying, he wasn't in control, and it was a rash challenge, and it was somewhat dangerous. I'm sure they'd go there, but I think it's unfair that if VAR has the power to overturn things in the positive, they should be able to overturn negative things like that as well. Definitely.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And anything that has a significant impact on the game, and possibly the next game, should definitely be something that should be auditable, if that's not a if that's a good word. Okay, so we're going at halftime. I love the way I have these conversations with myself.
Good word.
I don't need you guys.
Good word.
I don't.
Yeah,
need you. I just don't need you guys.
I'm just color commentary at this point.
So we go into half time, and guess who? Guess which team in which dressing room got a bollocking? Because out come Fulham, and we look like a very, very different team. We are full of spark. I think in the first, right from the get go, but certainly the first 10 minutes, we look like a different team, and we are dangerous in transition. We're dangerous in attack. Our execution in the final 25% of the pitch isn't that much better, but our attitude really is, and our intensity definitely is. Even up to the moment where Jimenez scored, which I think is 60 on the 61st minute. So what's that? How's my maths here? Is that 17 minutes into? No, 16 minutes into.
You're just rambling now. You just saying.
No, 16 minutes into the second half. I'm saying that if Jimenez doesn't score, he's about to be wrenched off the pitch 100%. At that point.
Yeah.
And so obviously it's very difficult. I mean, I've seen it happen plenty of times. I've seen it happen where a guy scores and gets taken off. But I don't think I think Silva's just not going to do that to one of our strikers. Not the state of our strikers. But yeah, guys, comments on that goal, the Jimenez goal.
Well, before we do the goal, I want to pose a question to the both of you. What did Silva say to the group? Like, did he have kind words? Was it I'm going to sit you down and be like, boys, you're better than this? Or was it an absolute bollocking where he threw chairs? Because he must have said something, and I want to hear both of your narratives.
Mark?
Yeah. I think we went with kind Silva, not angry Silva. I think we saw angry Silva. Was it last season or 2 seasons ago? You remember when we made that triple substitution in the first half and we were 3-0 down to Forest? That was probably angry Silva. There's no rescuing that situation. Like, the game is done. You really screwed it up. When we're 1-0 down off, let's say, relatively evenly matched side, even though this is another point I want to make and we can circle back to it. But, like I said, not the Newcastle of old. Made some really, really good investments and some expensive signings. But he probably said, we're still in this. We've beaten them once. We haven't beaten. He loves to bring this up, I think, to motivate the team. He says, we haven't beaten Everton at Goodison Park since, 1966. We haven't beaten Chelsea at Stamford Bridge since X, right? Probably said the same thing. Guys, we're still in this game, right? They're good, but you're good. We have a plan. Believe in the plan, right? And then I think in the post-match said, give everything. So, and it worked. Yeah, I think that's it was a good motivational speech. I think he probably gave him a little bit of tough love, but it was more motivational than angry. That's my bet.
I like that.
I think you're right. I didn't see Silva's post-match, but Jack was talking about it, and I think he commented that we have to do. There were some good things in the first half, and we've got to keep doing those. But we need to add these different things and make some changes. Now, I don't think he would have absolutely, thrown things around the dressing room. So we talk me through that goal, and because you could argue it was kind of a careful side footing into the net. How good a goal do you think that was?
Ooh, look, okay. I don't think it's the best goal I've ever seen, but it gets Jimenez in a good position, and it just furthers Anthony Robinson being the best left back in the Prem, because he sets that up really, really nicely. And the whole game, I thought Anthony Robinson was excellent the whole game. And how many assists has that boy got this season? He must be close to double digits.
10 now. Yeah, he's
10,
joint top. Yeah.
It's actually nice that in the commentary they're singing his praises and actually referring to him as one of the best left backs in the Prem. He is the best left back in the Prem. But look, Jimenez just needs to be in the right place at the right time. And I think sometimes we can accuse Jimenez quite rightly of trying to do too much and trying to be a bit too clever and a bit too all over the place. He's great when he has a clear assignment and he just has to put it away. And that's what he did. And it was just nice to see. Sometimes the best thing is the simplest thing.
I love how the move starts and ends with Jimenez as well, right? He wins the ball back, tenacious, drives it upfield, lays it off to Adama. Adama does kind of, sometimes I wish they were a bit faster, but he does it feels like a floating cross to Robinson. And then first time, right? Straight into the middle of the box, finds Jimenez hits it. And you make your own luck, right? This is something I'm very vocal about in the Discord. Being direct, being fast, being pacey. It took a deflection and it went in. Instead of Jimenez stops and waits, and then defense resets, and then he passes off to the wing, and they look and they wait and they try and get a cross in, and then eventually Shaw or Botman or Byrne, because he's 6'6", gets his noggin on it and sends it out. It's boring, it's predictable, it's slow. Take the shot, right? Who knows what happens? And this time, Dubravka probably saves that, but Murphy gets his foot in the way, and it completely wrong foots Dubravka, and then it goes in. Brilliant. More of that. They all count, right? Whether it's a deflection, whether it comes off your butt, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a goal. Take the shot. So really, really pleased. And I think this is why Jimenez starts. He did do a little bit too much in the beginning, right? With the back heels and the fancy stuff. Mate, what are you doing? Just make sure you complete the pass, right? But Jimenez, I feel, is more well-rounded, right? Muniz is lovely. He's entropy. He brings the energy. And we can talk about him later. And he's big and burly, but Jimenez can connect play, and he can make those runs, and he can definitely has that experience, right? Where he can maybe slow things down in his mind a little bit and see who's free and who's open and what to do with the ball. So really, really pleased for Jimenez, given it wasn't the best showing in the beginning.
Well, that's a lovely segue. Well, two great segues there. Did I mention that we have a Discord? That we have a Discord.
You got
that
one
we have
job.
a really, really, really good Discord. And if you haven't already joined, you're missing something, because Mark's really active and he says a lot of stuff. And,
I love that your marketing it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
It's very good.
Yeah, arguably the greatest conversation area about Fulham in the world, according to us. And secondly, this is a great segue into something I really want to talk about. We tiptoe around the topic, but the question of whether we have a good enough striker, to me, is still live. We're in the transfer window. I know we have a very, very unlikely. There's very little chance we're going to sign a striker in the transfer window. So the conversation turns back to the stocks we have in the cupboard. And I think it's a really fascinating story of how Marco uses these two guys. And to me, in my head, it's a constant debate as to who should start. And it's really funny, actually, in the whole Fulham fan base. I think it's very divided in terms of who people would prefer to see in the starting 11. And I mean, Jimenez, very experienced player, had an incredible run at Wolves, terrible injury, and has, now come back and by and large has been good for Fulham. And in the context of how much we paid for him, he's been really, really good return on investment, to put aside how much he costs us every week in terms of wages and salaries. It's sort of contrasted with Muniz, who had an incredible patch. I mean, everyone would agree he's not yet the real deal, but we've seen that he has the quality, and he put together an incredible patch last season when he scored, a whole bunch of goals in the month of, I think it was February or March, and has certainly not been given the same opportunities to start. And Jack and I had a long conversation about this today, and we were talking about the fact that there appears to be very much a pecking order that the team have accepted, certainly those two have accepted, where Jimenez has clearly got the shirt, as even though Muniz has got number 9, Jimenez has got the shirt to start every week. I don't even see tactical changes for different game situations or different oppositions. Jimenez pretty much starts. And I just think it's actually very interesting. And I think it's quite divided in terms of how people feel about it. Go, Sam.
Here's the hill that I'll die on. I want to win games. And if that means I want to win games. I don't actually care who starts. I care about the system that we play. And if the system that we play is Jimenez starts, he has a longer game because he can play a longer game. And then we can bring on Muniz at a later point in the game, so then he can have his best game because he's not as good when we start and he can't really go a full 90 minutes. If we can prioritize him at his best when we need him, I actually don't care if he starts or not. Now, this is just for at this current time. I have every faith that Muniz will get better. And as Muniz gets better, it's very likely that Jimenez will probably age out, and then we will be looking for other people. I think we should start the conversation for somebody else as soon as physically possible, because until Jimenez, not Jimenez, I keep on mixing up their names, until Muniz can play a full game, I think the system actually works fine. But I there will be a point, I think, where Muniz will be the guy, or maybe they'll get another guy to work alongside Muniz. But until then, this system for me is fine because Jimenez still gets goals and Muniz still gets goals. In the system where Muniz starts, he doesn't seem to get goals. It's as simple as that for me.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think there's a couple of questions in that one question, right? One is do we need a new striker? Which is very different from will we get a new striker? We seem to not really believe in succession planning more than we believe in firefighting at our firm. Wow, that was very corporate. At our club. A bit of a Freudian slip there about where I work. But anyway, so we don't believe in, so what do I mean by that? Well, who's the backup for Leno? Oh, we have Benda, but hopefully we don't have to use him in a Premier League setting. Who's the backup for Robbo when he eventually goes in summer? Oh, maybe Cesc, but not really. So, thankfully when Kenny got injured, we have Castagna, who's just as capable a deputy, right? But so I don't think we're going to get a striker, right? Because we have more pressing issues. So, okay, Jimenez versus Muniz. Well, I think, I guess it kind of depends on the opponent as well. Jimenez also great from the penalty spot, so that's nice to have. But do we think Muniz is going to get better, right? If we do, we should probably tie him down to a new contract because people have been sniffing I think Chelsea was sniffing last season when he had that purple patch and did 9 goals in 2 months or something like that. And now we heard West Ham were sniffing for about 30 million. He's still raw. He has that potential, but if it were up to me, we probably wouldn't have anyone until summer. In summer, I'd say we let Jimenez go. He's expensive. I don't think he's going to get any better. We keep Muniz. I don't know if we upgrade Muniz to the main guy, but we bring in someone else in the profile of Jimenez, but younger. And I hope we prioritize the attack. But let's see, because I think Adama's out of contract as well. He might have the extra year extension, which I don't know, probably going to trigger, maybe not. But yeah, it's a tricky question. But, I don't think it's a matter so much of if they're capable of doing a job, because they are, but it's also where do we want to be? And if we want to keep pushing up, we got to start looking for the next Isak. We probably don't have the money to blow 70 million on a striker, but 40, maybe even 50, right? A new star signing, which, sorry, I'm rambling, but I'll wrap this up quickly.
No, it's
not
good.
at all.
Good.
Not at
The
all.
point I wanted to bring up, right, and why it's so impressive. I've mentioned it twice before. This is the Newcastle of old. We, myself included, give ESR grief. You're our record signing. You're 32 million pounds. We really need you to show up from day one, which he hasn't at times, right? He's been a ghost at times. I'll admit that. When we play Newcastle, do you know how expensive do you think he is in their list of signings? Because I looked this up before the show.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would pale compared to...
Not even close, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's 6.
Yeah. No, but I've been very vocal and pretty hard on ESR, but I confine my commentary to the context of Fulham and what we pay for players. And I think he's well and truly up there, if not at the top of what we are prepared to pay for players. And so, if we're constrained like that, I feel like we need huge impact for that kind of money. But look, I just wanted to cover off on some stats here because I did some digging to compare Muniz and Raul. And so Muniz this season, these are all this season. Muniz has appeared 23 times to Raul's 24. Muniz has had 6 starts to Raul's 20. Muniz has played 672 minutes to Raul's 1,522. Now, Muniz has scored 4 goals, is that right? Or was he 3? I thought he was 3.
4, I think.
Yeah, 4. Okay, 4. And I think Raul's got 9. And if you look at... So, excluding Jimenez's penalties, because, look, I've got no problem with his penalty taking. It kind of terrifies me a bit, but, geez, he's pretty good at them. And he's pretty reliable. But in the case that he wasn't on the pitch, even if we took Muniz out of the picture, Pereira takes a good penalty. There are others who could do that job and fill in. So I'm excluding penalties in terms of XG from his goals. Muniz, XG per 90 minutes, 0.54. Raul, 0.38. But I think what's also interesting is, and I think you may have touched on this, Mark and Sam, is that maybe the balance that, or the formula that Silva's landed on, is that it seems that regardless of how well Muniz functions when he starts, Raul doesn't seem to function very well when he comes on as a substitute. I don't believe he scored once. Or he may have scored once. No, I think he's never scored coming on as a substitute this season. Muniz has scored all his goals in coming on. And the other interesting stat there is Muniz scores a goal between 12 and 15 minutes, or 12 and 25 minutes after coming on as a substitute, which makes you wonder why Silva typically leaves it so late to bring him on. He's not the guy to come on like Harry Wilson, appear in the box and knock a couple in the last 10 minutes. He actually needs some time. He needs 12 to 25 minutes to score and find his way into the game. And I think those are quite interesting stats. But all of this has to be said, with a bit of a wry smile, because actually we're cobbling it together quite well, despite all of our frustrations, that we'd love a top shelf striker. How many points are we off the Champions League at the moment? Not many. Remarkably. Yeah. And I think we'd love our striker to be scoring, averaging a goal a game, wouldn't we all? But or even a goal every 2 games would be pretty good. But maybe Silva's simple formula is neither of them are doing that well. I can't really afford to risk giving any one of them a month where unconditionally they're not going to get pulled regardless of how they perform. And Raul doesn't do very well off the bench, and maybe that makes it a certainty that he has to start, and Muniz has to be the bench guy. Thoughts?
And that's okay. I just want it to be like streamlined. I don't think it's a negative thing. I think that is actually a good system because it works. If it didn't work, then I would say it's a bad system. So I'm not that wound up about it. I want Liam to lap. I know that's I want to talk about Muniz's goal as well, just desperately, just because I still love the guy, but I just really, it's kind of like what you said. I really just want a definitive striker who's definitively our guy, and there's not really a question about it, because it must be exhausting for Silva just to be making the best of a bad situation, but not fully. I mean, he must be wanting. He must be wanting for that top shelf draw that we just don't necessarily have yet.
Obviously. But I feel like every time we get sort of within sight of being ready to consider a striker, something else emerges. Suddenly now we've got an issue at right back, highest on the priority. We've got issues in centre of midfield, or perhaps another midfielder. Suddenly now we've got a shortage of wingers. We've got 2 injured wingers, and in the reality of Silva's world, where he's just not going to be given £100 million or more to spend. What's our PP our actual financial ceiling on how much we can spend? It's got to be in the region of 100 million, maybe a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And even if it was 100, even let's call it 100 million. I just don't see him being given a budget of 100 million to spend in summer, even. And if he's got to put out some more urgent fires, the question of a better striker seems to go to the bottom of the list. Practically so. Is that an unfair observation or summation of it?
No, I think that's pretty on point.
I think we're cobbling together a pretty good solution. It's sort of working. It's frustrating because I think this team could be so much better if we had a real focal point, like Itzhak is a good example, but there are others. I mean, even look at Forrest with Wood. He's not a classic. He's not a striker that a year ago I would have been suggesting we go after, but someone in that form who can score that many goals, don't care what he looks like, don't care how he moves, but if he can score that many goals and is such a target, that really takes us to the next level. Anyway, we go round and round. I don't think much is going to change in terms of the way that we spend money, and I think we're going to have to manage our way through to the end of the year. And if perchance we actually do qualify for Europe, or in whatever form, boy, we're going to have to spend some money to be competitive, because we are thin and skinny. We are way too skinny to be competing.
I agree with that. I think kind of tangentially to it, one thing that we should be conscious of, which is really good, is there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of egos in our squads, right? And why I bring that up is they're both vying for that starting striker spot. And you can see from Muniz's post-match interview that he's just happy to have scored, and he says God is good, and he was talking to Andreas. And he seems like a really humble, likable guy, right? And, you know, like I said, related to that, John Duran to Saudi. This is kind of hearsay, but I read a little bit of background on it. Yes, they made a great sale, but they had two great strikers in Watkins and Duran. But apparently Duran was deeply, deeply upset that he wasn't starting, given his form. And he would be turning up late, and he'd be disruptive. And at that point, when the ego takes over the good of the team, you have to move one, right? Now they've done 100%. Well because they've moved it for a big, big price, and that helps reinforce other parts of the squad. But this is it's good that we don't have that issue, because I could imagine someone like Mitro would not be pleasant if he's always on the bench, 100%. Right?
100%.
And he'd be sulking, and you want a little bit of ego. You want a little bit of someone trying to better themselves, but you also want someone that plays for the team and understands their role in it, and is patient and hardworking. So it's a balance to strike, and I just thought that was worth mentioning, given that's probably an intangible that really works for us in terms of who we bring on board and who plays for Fulham.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going
to
say as well, like, one of our greatest strengths, and you could actually see it in the second half more so than the first, is we really play for each other. And it makes the biggest difference in a squad, because you see it all the time, where you'll have teams that are incredible. I'm not sure if you've been following La Liga much, either of you, but Real Madrid's really, really interesting, because now that Vinicius isn't there, Mbappe is actually able to play properly, and they're just night and day. And you can see how they share the ball around. But when Vinicius was there, he was directly competing with Mbappe to be the star. And it's a really good example of how detrimental that can be when egos just take over, because if it's harmonious and everybody genuinely wants everybody to succeed, and you see that when we're celebrating, I truly, truly believe that there is a lot of love and camaraderie going on in the squad, and everyone is lifting and working with each other. And I mean, Muniz is the best example, because he's very, very clearly a lovely boy who's just wants the best for everyone. And it just makes the difference, because then when your back's against the wall, if you can turn to everybody and know that they've got your back, you're more likely to actually get that goal, as opposed to think that you have to do it all yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could not go any further than, I think Silva deserves the praise for all of that. I think when he selects players for his squad, he picks players with that in mind, and then once they're in the tent, he manages them very well. And I think he's very fortunate, and probably determines the hierarchy and makes it easier for Silva that he does have the Brazilian. The Brazilian Labrador, who's just happy to be there, and it's early in his career. He's probably delighted to be playing Premier League football. I just hope they get the checkbook out and pay him a decent wage. From what I gather, he was on at the start. It's not a lot of money, and he, to me, if you look around the room, he deserves to be on probably 3 or 4 times what he's earning right now, which I believe is around $8,000 a week, something as paltry as that. Someone may now correct me, but I believe it's in that sort of order. And I'd like to see him be recognised for the value he does bring, and that's easily 30 grand a week in my head, maybe more. Let's just cover off. Actually, let's talk about the Muniz goal. Sam, take us through how much you loved it.
Oh, I loved it. Do you know what I actually really loved about it was I loved in the post game. I'm not sure if you saw, but they interviewed Muniz as well, and he said to Andreas, "If you get the ball to me, I'll score." And then he just threw in a "God is good" at the end of that as well because he's just a lovely, lovely boy. I was ecstatic because I just love when he does well for all the reasons that I said before. Is it the sexiest goal? No. It's actually, I mean, I genuinely think even if Muniz doesn't get to it, I think Andreas has got a pretty good shot. That's still going in anyway. But you know what? I'm just going to give the credit to Muniz because I really, really like him. I thought it was a really, really beautiful set piece. We haven't been doing any very good set pieces lately. So it was really nice to see that actually work. And yeah, man, I mean, scoring the 82nd minute, I'm loving life. And I've just been riding off of that ever since, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And Fulham always has a funny way of playing with your feelings, right? Like before the United game, we're like, United are in terrible form. We should be able to not walk this, but I have confidence in us. And then the other way around, Andy P gets a free kick, and it's like, oh well, yeah, whatever, cool, good luck, buddy. And then you get a pleasant surprise off the back of that. So Fulham has a very curious way of just completely going contrary to well, at least to my expectations, and really glad to see our two substitutes combine and sort of very clever move. I'd like to chat a little bit. I've watched it back a few times. I actually think this is really well choreographed. Yes, it's a great delivery, but watch the replay and watch how Isak completely loses Muniz, and Castagna, I don't know if it's Trippier, but Castagna makes a run that blocks off the other defender who's close to Muniz, right? And I think that's on purpose because he's moving away from the ball, but he's kind of doing that NBA style basketball block, which stops Trippier or whoever that is from interfering with Muniz. And then Muniz gets his boot on it. Isak is a striker who's probably not expecting to have to defend much, so he lets him go. And then we score off the back of that, and it wrong puts Dubravka. Yeah,
a great pickup. Really cool I was actually watching it on the replay. I firstly, that's a dangerous ball dipping into that little hole just by the near post. I loved the narrowing of the eyes. Muniz is so focused, and he's desperate to get on something on it. And I don't think that is going in, Sam, if Muniz doesn't touch that. Maybe just the flurry of limbs puts the keeper off. But I think Muniz very, very cleverly does just enough to, just change the course of that ball. And it's very, very difficult at close range like that for the keeper to do much about that. So, yeah, that's classic striker stuff, to just get that little bit on it, get away from your man. Obviously, ably assisted by Castagna, we'll take that. But what a goal, what a time to score it. As you said, the two substitutes combining. One guy hasn't had a lot of luck, that's Muniz, and one guy that hasn't had a lot of love, being Pereira. So good to see away at St James's Park in the 82nd minute, leaving Fulham still quite a lot to do, to be fair. And I think we managed out the game pretty well. I thought we were pretty calm. We didn't actually totally try to shut the game down, and we sensibly played with possession when we needed to, and went long and just put it into their half when we also needed to. I thought we did it all pretty well. Guys, let's just quickly cover off on the last slide or two here, and I want to focus on this beautiful slide for those following along on the live stream, and for those listening, I'm going to talk you through it. Fulham in 9th place, but only 5 points off Newcastle in 5th place. And I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think the games have gone, the results have gone pretty well for us actually in the last couple of weeks. With our form in the last month, we could have actually dropped off this pack and for whatever reason, we're still very much connected. Yes, sure, we're in ninth place. That doesn't sound great, but we're actually very close to the action. And arguably, we're literally 5 points off Champions League. Now, am I wishing and willing for that? Not necessarily, but I'm just trying to articulate, who our neighbours are, I guess, and how close we really are to the action. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. Unless you guys have got anything else you want to bring up.
Look, I mean, do you know what? Honestly, there is a lot of things that we probably could have discussed that would have maybe leaned on the negative, but I'm very glad that we didn't discuss them because it's been a wonderful morning. It's been a wonderful day. I'd rather just leave it on an optimistic note, and I'm also kind of crashing right now, so I'm just going to leave it there. Mic drop.
It's all about you, Sam. It's actually funny in the Discord. I saw someone who unfortunately I can't remember his name. It could have been Aussie. He said, "Oh, thank God we had a win because my wife and family are going to be so happy about this that I won't actually walk around all Sunday being really fucking grumpy." I thought it was very funny, and I totally identify with it. Totally. Did I mention that we have a Discord channel? Well, actually, I forgot to mention, but you know what? I'm going to mention it again. We're turning things around here and flipping them a bit, but it's actually really important because tomorrow is the last day of the transfer window. Everyone knows that Fulham transfers and Fulham fan news are very, very active, not just having their tweets echoed in the Discord, but actually commenting actively and interacting with people and members in the Discord. It's a really, really good chat. And obviously they're very, very well connected to a whole network of journalists and a couple of sneaky connections at the club as well, I suspect. So get stuck in, guys. Great time to actually jump into the Discord for Fulham fan news alone. Sorry, not Fulham fan news, transfer news alone. But in general, great place to be for a Fulham chat. So why don't you do it? Why haven't you done it yet? Why haven't you done it?
Because you didn't say it at the start. That's why they haven't done it.
I was hoping you weren't going to mention that. I'll cop this in the WhatsApp group, but never mind.
For me.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on the live stream, for your comments. We haven't actually interacted so much, but we have been reading them along and trying to merge it into our conversation. And as always, thank you so much for being part of the chat and enriching our lives and taking some time out of your day. And to you two guys, thank you for joining me, Mark and Sam.
Thank you, Elton. Always a pleasure to be here and chew the fat with you guys. So to many more wins in the season.
Thanks,
Absolutely. Daddy.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah. And just a reminder that I believe on Tuesday we'll be doing a wrap up of the transfer window. So we'll be doing another pod a midweek, and then After Dark we'll be back on Thursday as they normally are. So please keep a lookout for those episodes. But as always, I'm going to take you out with what we always say when we leave this thing, and that is, come on, you Whites.